Chukwu is standing by from Lagos. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Assets Mangement. Mr. Chukwu, how are you doing today? Good morning to you from Abuja. How is Lagos?
Good morning, Nancy. Well, Lagos is very clement. The weather is very bright. The sun is already very strong. And as it's being speculated, we hope that with the strength of the sun, the spread of the COVID-19 in Lagos will actually be moderated.
Mr. Chukwu, the last time I checked, you are not a medical doctor. And yes, and there's no theory saying that because we live in a tropic environment or when the sun shines more or when the heat is more that COVID-19 effect reduces or you don't tend to get. So I don't want us to enter that part. So let's just leave it. Let's just leave that part for the medical people to decipher. But let me start by asking you this question first before we go into the president's speech. There's been unrest in some certain parts of Lagos. Speak to me about perhaps where you live, the conditions there, the situations there rather. A lot of people are saying that even for me, I was expecting that the president would have highlighted the security situation that we're seeing in some parts of the country because people are tired of staying at home now. Economies or people depend on daily wages, daily income. So speak to me about the situation around where you stay and what you've been hearing about security in some parts of Lagos.
Okay, Nancy, what you are hearing about security in some parts of Lagos is real. I live in Lekki Phase 1, and within the neighborhood where I live, which is actually supposed to be a highbrow area, we've seen a lot of daily workers, construction workers, who have littered the entire streets and neighborhoods, and they are begging people for arms. I'm talking of people who we are 3 weeks ago working at construction sites, but because those construction sites have shut down and because they are daily wage earners, they've not earned any income for the past 2-3 weeks, and they are now begging for arms. So when they see you, they'll be calling you early in the morning when we go out for our normal exercises. They will approach you, they will beg you on the street. Some of them are still very polite in their begging, but I heard my wife actually told me that she has actually encountered some fierce-looking ones among them who are having red blood eyes. You could actually say they're not eating. So yesterday, for instance, she decided she's going to feed some of them. She brought out a bag of rice and some bags of Indomie to go and distribute to them. But the reality is that these people have not eaten. Many of them are hungry, and they are getting to a point where they may stop begging than they may be demanding. So it's real. Even in high exclusive areas like Lekki Phase 1, people lives could come under threat because those who the society has failed to take care of will be demanding to take their claim on the society. And that's the idea. I mean, if you recall, we highlighted this in our earlier discussion before the lockdown, that if we should lock down, we must find ways to take care of those who are the rung of the ladder because they live by the day. And if they don't earn income for 2 weeks, it's impossible. They don't have savings. They don't have anything to fall back on. They need to eat. And if you don't feed them, they will not lie down on the floor and die of hunger.
Okay.
Take the money first. So I think that's what's happening in part of Lagos. I heard in Agege 2 days ago, it was very bloody, and people had to come out to come and defend themselves from those boys. And it's actually fascinating because as we speak, many of them have run out of what to eat. And the government, unfortunately, the palliative the government is distributing has seemed not to have gotten to Lagos. And even the format is being distributed will be difficult to distribute to this set of people because if you carry bags of cash to call them, gather them, you are not going to go out of that place with your life because they will scramble for that cash. And we have advocated repeatedly that the government must adopt a more technology-based method to distribute palliatives to those who are at the rung of the ladder.
Okay. Would you have expected the president to pay attention to it, especially in his speech yesterday, talking about unrest? I'm also aware that in some parts of Ogun State, a lot of people are coming out to defend themselves. I think particularly Lambe and all of that. People are not even sleeping anymore. Would you have expected more from the president in acknowledging the insecurity as a result of the economic lockdowns that we're seeing that is depriving Nigerians of their daily bread?
Yes, absolutely. I think it was an oversight on the part of the speechwriters. They obviously omitted that. It was clearly an oversight because at the time the speech was made by 7 p.m. yesterday, it was already common knowledge. We already have social media circulating pictures and videos of those unrest in Agege and some parts of Lagos, and as you mentioned, some parts of Ogun State. So it should have been part of what the president should have would have dealt in his speech. But unfortunately, that was omitted. I believe it was an oversight. But that having been omitted, I think the presidential task force on COVID-19 need to move speedily. If we have to lock down Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja for the next 2 weeks, you must do something urgently to provide source of livelihood for those who live on daily income. Not just the people we are talking of, the construction workers. You have the traders, the hawkers on the street, the itinerant traders that have completely exhausted their capital when staying at home because the little capital they had was what they were using to make small profits to sustain themselves. You need to do something for them immediately. Otherwise, the next 2 weeks of lockdown may be difficult for this to observe.
Now, Mr. Chukwu, is it that perhaps that some of those things we are just saying are a bit theoretical? How practical is it for the federal government to really reach the poor and the vulnerable amongst us and, augment for their sources of livelihoods at this time? You understand what I mean? Because it will be like it's very easy. Okay, just share money or send them money to their accounts. But how easy is it for the federal government to give palliatives to those that really need it right now, those that really need it?
Well, Nancy, I don't think it's such a difficult thing. In several fora, I have actually advocated that let's adopt some of the technology available to us today. I mean, if you cast your mind back, just barely a year ago, the government was actually distributing money through electronic channels. The market money and all those social intervention programs were actually distributed electronically. I'm not sure the vice president went about distributing physical cash. It was electronic payments that were being made to those people who were poor, who are considered poor. So why are we not adopting the technology we used last year, even when we have seen further improvement and advancement over the past 1 year? So I think it beggars logic that in 2020, somebody will carry Ghana must go bag of cash and go to some sections of the country and start distributing cash. It beats my imagination. The reality is that we have virtually everybody, including those very poor, have their phone numbers. Those phone numbers have biometric numbers, registrations. And with those biometric registrations, you can identify each individual on his own individuality. And on that basis, you can make transfers to those phones. Irrespective of whether the phone is a smartphone or just an analog phone, they will receive in form of either recharge card, which they can cash, or in form of cash, which they can go to any of the payment platforms and cash. So I think to go and continue to distribute cash beggars logic. There are channels that the government, if the government approaches the telecommunication companies today, within 2 days, they'll give them a harmonized list of all subscribers, eliminating double counting of those who have more than one line. And then you use their recharge values, their monthly recharge values, to determine those who have minimal income. And then start by that. You may not be a perfect basis, but you're going to achieve something like 80-90% success rate.
Mm. The other question would be, I'm not the spokesperson for the federal government or the president at this point, but the argument, which was I raised this with the government, I think last week, when the SSA on public affairs to the president came on the program during Gilali, I did also raise this. And the argument he put forward was, Nancy, come on, these are people that really need the cash at that point. Putting it in the banks at that point may not, be to any advantage because they need money to buy food and all of that. How do you see that explanation? Can the government get away with that?
I'm laughing because why I'm laughing is I want them to come and try it in Agege. Let them come with their bag of rice, bags of cash, and come with a battalion of soldiers and see if they can escape from Agege. They will not be able to distribute that money. It's so archaic that we're talking about distributing cash. If you transfer cash, automatically you can transfer to all the people you want to give the money within a matter of 5 seconds. And those people will go to wherever they live and they find out a payment platform to cash that money. So What's the essence of gathering? In the first place, it's actually difficult to distribute money physically. How many people will you gather together? You are talking of social distancing, and you want people to gather together and queue up or just to get their own share of the money, when you can actually transfer the money while they are at their homes. And that will give them more confidence that they don't need to go out. You want people to stay at home. Okay, if you want to distribute, for instance, in Lagos, how many points of distribution are you going to create? How will you expect people to transport themselves from their localities or their residences to those locations? How are you going to observe the social distancing that is required to avoid, to minimize infection? So those things, like I said, it's beggars logic that we're still insisting on cash distribution today. We have several platforms, and as I mentioned earlier, the government has practicalized and practiced the concept of use of electronic payment systems when they were doing market money and traders' money. Now, why can't we use it? Why must we go and distribute cards? Again, the card is difficult for accountability purposes. How are you going to be sure that if you say you gave out 20,000 to 100, you actually give out 20,000 to 100 people? Or like if you use the electronic payment platforms, you can easily vouch the amount you have distributed.
Now, let's take a look at holistically the president's speech and take it from perhaps where he talked about things around the economy, that's economically alleviating perhaps the sufferings of Nigerians. Are there some pluses for you in that speech, and are there some minuses? If they are, what are they?
Well, the plus is that the president has mentioned that a couple of ministers should come together to come up with something, how to alleviate. But I think 14 days is more than enough time for them to have already formulated what they want to do. Right now, there's actually no time. We've actually lost all the time we have. The key thing is that we're at the point of doing it. The hungry person who has not eaten for 2 days has no time for ministers to come together and formulate policies. The 2 weeks of lockdown was enough time for them to formulate policies. I thought that what we'll be hearing are specifics to say, okay, we have actually reviewed our policies as it relates to social investment program, and we're going to adopt these new policies. And then if you want the ministers to come together, they should have done that in the past 2 weeks. That's the area I thought. But it's good that, well, they tell you that it's better to be late than never. That they are already thinking of that, but I think they need to move a lot faster than they are moving because time is of essence, particularly to hungry souls in this country.
Do you see a holistic strategy by Nigeria to come out of this COVID-19, to handle COVID-19 pandemic and also to come out of it? Why I'm asking, because I was having a conversation yesterday with someone and we were really talking about what holistic strategy, because I'm looking at what other countries are doing in terms of mitigating the impact of COVID-19 on their economies and on their environment. We're seeing that perhaps, not just even for Nigeria, perhaps on the continent, Africa, do you think that perhaps we are just waiting for the Western economies to come up with a solution? That what we are also seeing in Nigeria and perhaps the rest of Africa is that President Trump, America is on lockdown, Europe is on lockdown, Asia, some parts are on lockdown, India is on lockdown. If they also lift their restrictions, Nigeria too will follow suit. That means that there's no, you understand what I mean? Yeah, it's not really a laughing matter, because yesterday when I was thinking through it, I was really, perturbed in the sense that I'm not seeing a holistic plan. It seems as if we are mirroring a model from the West or from other economies, not having in mind the peculiarity of our own economy. And when I was speaking with the person yesterday, this analogy came up that Nigeria, in the case of Nigeria, is a case of those copying in an examination hall. You are doing expo, you are copying, not knowing that the answer you are writing for is for another level. I hope you understand what I mean. You are writing, you are copying from others. You don't know that that answer is not for that question. Do you understand what I mean? Because of the peculiarity. Yes. That is really troubling.
Nancy, absolutely. I understand where you're coming from. I felt the same way, but I had a discussion with somebody at the high echelon of the Ministry of Health yesterday. One of the things that we are of concern to me is that in terms of managing COVID-19, we seem to be running after the infection, not running ahead of the infection. And that if we continue to run after the infection and not ahead of the infection, there's no end to this race, because the infection will always be ahead of us. And what do I mean by this? I believe we need to expand our testing capabilities. It seems our testing is very narrow. If you're talking about testing of about just about 5,000 to 6,000 people since February, that compared to countries like Ghana that has done more than almost 38,000 and South Africa that done about 80,000. Either we lack the testing kits or we do not have the test collection centers enough as to get the samples, but something is obviously not adding up. The reason is this: the people we are testing are mostly people who are infected or who are coming to direct contact with those who are infected and have shown symptoms. I believe we need to expand that. Or even if that is what we're doing, we need to make sure the coverage is faster. Otherwise, before we get those people tested and isolated, they would have infected other people, and then we keep running after the infection and not. So you're going to have several generations of infection. And if we continue that way, the only solution will be when the world finds a vaccine or a cure for us to arrest. So we're not going to ever get to the point where we say we've gotten to the plateau, like other countries are saying that they have gotten to the zenith, and then what they should expect is a decrease. Then on the economic front, I think just like other countries are going to do, the palliative that most countries are pronouncing today will not restart their economies. The policies that the economic incentive that restart the economies will be different and will come only after the end of the medical crisis or the health crisis. And I'll tell you why. A lot of businesses are going to run out of cash. Some of them will request soft loan from the government to support them. The aviation industry is going to be in difficulty. The hospitality industries will be in difficulty. The small, particularly for Nigeria, the small and medium-scale traders, those whose income level, capital and the 100,000, 200,000 level, would have exhausted their capital during the lockdown. And they need to have access to fresh funding to resume their life. If we don't find a way of doling out some level of grants to small business operators, then you're going to see millions and millions of people who were managing themselves before this lockdown that can no longer feed their families. Remember, about 89% of our economic activities are driven by the small and medium-scale enterprises. So, and those people, I can tell you, many of them don't have capital of 500,000. But with the little capital they have, because they go out every day, they earn small profit, they live on their profit, and they preserve their capital. Now they are home, and they're going to be at home for 1 month. And I can tell you that at the end of the 1 month, they would have exhausted their capital, and they have nothing to resume business. So that's why we should be thinking of how are we going to provide some level of grants to such small and medium-scale businesses so that they can restart their businesses.
Mr. Chukwu, I think we will leave it at that because there are so many questions that are coming up. But let's leave it at that this morning and continue to watch the situation and hope that the government is really taking note of all of this. Like I've always said, there should be a strategic, I don't know if it's think tank now, because I'm seeing different think tanks now. With the one the government just set yesterday, ECA, that's Economic Advisory Council, EAC, then Economic Sustainability Committee. I think we should just begin to see what these people are putting together. But many thanks, Mr. Chukwu, for joining me today, and continue to stay safe while I do too. Thank you.